much of prediction then, like in terms of sort of the growth on the Gen AI space in China. In some sense, it's kind of cool to hear that basically OpenAI made Microsoft great again. What needs to happen to make Baidu great again, or Alibaba or Tencent? Any prediction, or Xiaomi?
Well, let me talk about Xiaomi. Yeah. Hi everybody, good to be back in Hong Kong.
That's awesome. And I think, and there's another unique thing, and thank you for sending all this stuff this morning. And I think one of the things also unique is that how every week you actually do an update for the OS, which is like the software part that you run, right? Which is very, very unusual compared to all the other Android phones that I've been using at the time. Like, what's the thought process? Why is there so much stuff to update?
Okay, so I remember when we were growing up as kids, right? For me, you know, I was a big fan of Sony products, right? I love their Walkman. I love their, you know, DVD player, right? The video cam, right? Later on PlayStation. But, you know, have you ever come across an experience where, hey, you wish, you know, this button is done differently, this feature is done differently, but you have no channel of giving feedback to Sony? I certainly don't know the email address of Akio, okay? But we never have this channel. So when we built Xiaomi, we think, hey, is it possible for us to co-develop these products with our users, right? And before Xiaomi, right? Each phone, you know, after it released, it probably will have a couple firmware, you know, release, have a year, you know, in between, mainly to fix bugs, right? Rarely adding any new feature. So we start this process where we basically, you know, do a OS upgrade weekly, okay?
And then fast forward a few years later, that obviously worked really well with the smartphone. Is it probably 2014, 2015 then, you started now explore smart TV, router, and now there's like all these other smart devices. What's the thought process there?
So when we first started building Xiaomi, right, we were a bunch of geeks that basically want to build things that we wanted for ourselves, right? And of course, we wouldn't stop at just phones, right? After we built the phones and we became more knowledgeable about manufacturing, supply chain management, right? We start to question, you know, some of the products, you know, we see in the market at that time, right? Does this product really have to be so uneasy to use? And does this really have to be so unintelligent, right? Why can't I connect with this, you know, IoT device? Well, it was not IoT device, just devices, right? Why is this so expensive, right? And then we see opportunity for us to basically innovate in other consumer electronics, right? But of course, we only have so much resource. We have to focus in our, you know, a few of the core devices. For the rest, we start to come up with a way. I think we innovate in building this so-called, you know, IoT ecosystem, where we incubate and invest in other companies where we think, you know, those great experts, great, you know, geeks like us, were able to build in their category, you know, a great product that also agree with the product development philosophy that we had. Yeah, and that's why, you know, now when you go into a Xiaomi store, you probably see a lot of products, right? Hopefully, you know, each one of them, you know, would, you know, give you, you know, high user experience, you know, good quality, just like, you know, the rest of the product. Because we're not trying to build everything, you know, on our own. We try to work with, you know, these partners, great partners, to produce, you know, what you call it, the best of breed for their category. Yeah, we become the channel only.
Xiaoai Tongxue is part of in the phone that come with?
So Xiaoai Tongxue is a separate team. It's basically a cloud team, right? But it actually, you know, is gateway through the phone, the TV, or the Yingxiang, the speaker, right? So think of that as basically just a, you know, software agent, right? But I can make it, you know, work with any devices that we produce, right? But phone, of course, was the main gateway, right? So when we evaluate all the AI path or technology existing at that time, I actually made a visit with my team, right, to visit Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Google, of course, and we also look into OpenAI, right? Because they each have different, tools and system to build this AI, and we ended up, using mostly from Google, TensorFlow, and all that, right? That was also the first time when, the industry was looking at OpenAI to see what they were doing. At the time, they were basically saying, okay, our goal is to solve prediction. Okay, our goal is to be able to make it to predict the next word or the next pixel, right? And how do you do it? We're just going to, get as much data as we could, as compute as we could, and then this problem will be solved. Okay, at that point, I think most people think it's not very credible, and most people, especially from the AI research community, didn't see that as too practical, because at that point, even 6 months ago, people still didn't believe it, right? People still believe that in order to do image recognition accurate enough, you have to do this domain-specific training. Okay, in order to do the NLP, you have to do this. Even for English, they think you have to do the NLP training for English in a very different way than you do it for Chinese. Okay, that's how the traditional AI expert were going into. But OpenAI basically, took a completely different approach. They took a quite brute force approach. Okay, they basically think that we already have enough of the research papers by 2016. All we need is just to a lot of data, scale up the data, scale up the compute, and they proved to be accurate, right? 6 months ago, since GPT 3.5. Now, everyone is paranoid, right? Because they are actually proving that this is really general purpose generative AI. It's not some programmable AI. Okay, it's not vertical specific AI, and that's why people are very paranoid. Right? You see programmer paranoid because it's actually writing code. Right? It's actually doing art design. So that is also the time when we actually see all these major releases from different companies. Right? This morning, NVIDIA just dropped a bomb, right, by releasing what's it called, L4 or N4? I can't remember, but they basically just released a super powerful, cloud GPU. That's basically allowing anyone, if you wanted to do LLM, right, you can do it with much cheaper costs. If you look at their research index, they have released over 157 papers since 2016. They have given most of the recipes to the rest of the company. So it's not a matter of, you still have to hire, 100 researchers to reinvent it. This is becoming an engineering problem, okay? So I would not be surprised to see, more than one LLP coming out in US, more than one LLP equally powerful, coming out from China, okay? I sort of expect it to be more like the cloud computing that we have seen in the last 10 years, right? You don't see just, cloud computing from one vendor. They compete because, Amazon and Azure, they compete with each other, right? And they're so good for the developers. We got to choose, okay? So I think the same is going to happen in China, and I think we just have to figure out how to really embrace this instead of, fearing it. I think that's basically the conversation probably most of the people, in this room have been having the last few weeks. Yeah.
So what's your prediction then, like in terms of sort of the growth on the Gen AI space in China? In some sense, it's kind of cool to hear that basically OpenAI made Microsoft great again. What needs to happen to make Baidu great again, or Alibaba or Tencent? Any prediction, or Xiaomi?
Well, let me talk about Xiaomi. Yeah. Well, no. I think for Xiaomi the answer will be a little bit different. Hopefully a little bit easier, right? Because Xiaomi is different from the other companies you just mentioned, right? We have quite a lot of devices in the market, right? For household, you know that we're working on EVs, right? We're working on robotics, right? So, I can imagine, down the road when this generative AI this agent becomes smarter and smarter, you still need a hardware to interact with, right? To a gateway, so that you can talk to your digital assistant, right? So I think hopefully the story for Xiaomi of how to, make their product smarter is more straightforward. But for the others, I wouldn't worry too much about the super big companies. Each of their core business will just become much more better or smarter, with this thing, right? I'm sure this is going to help to make the e-commerce much more effective, to make the conversion much more, efficient. Yeah, of course, each one of them is going to maintain their, core business, by embracing this, right? So I don't think we need to worry about those big guys, right? I think our focus can be, more about, hey, what's the new opportunity, for, we have a lot of founders here, right? Instead of trying to ask the same question, as we would the last 1 year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the scope of the problem that we were trying to solve probably match with the capability that we think our companies would have to solve, right? We wouldn't dare to dream too big, right, before this thing, right? But now I think the landscape has changed, right? Before, if you were to ask me, hey, KK, do you think you can, come up with, this medicine that can cure lung cancer? Before, my answer for you is, one, I'm not an expert in this area. Second, it would cost a lot to build this, research team and, all this engineering to do, right? I would hesitate to tell you, this is doable. But now, if you ask me that question again, I think the answer would be a, much more optimistic consideration, right? If I have the passion to do that, right? Now, I think AI have just, bridging the gap between, dreamer and highly skilled set people, professionals, right? I no longer have to have, all the knowledge in the world. I can actually tap into this, super AI to solve those big problems. So I think the question that we can start asking as founders would be quite different than before. In the last 10 years, probably only a few guys is as crazy as Elon Musk to dare to dream, right? When he built, SpaceX, he's not a rocket scientist, right? He had to assemble all these engineers, from scratch. So to do it, it took him, 15 years, 16 years to get to where he is, right? But can you imagine if he had this AI capability, right? I read somewhere that says the CTO of SpaceX claimed that the program, being done in SpaceX, 80% is being done by AI already. I don't know how true is that, but I would not be surprised, right? Give it another 3 years, each of us will have access to our Jarvis. Jarvis is the super AI for Iron Man, right? So I guess it would be so different, I think I start to imagine a very different, way of thinking entrepreneurship as well as investment because of that. Otherwise, I would be too pessimistic, worrying that AI would take over everything, right? If it happened, so be it. But what if it didn't happen, right? We can actually use this tool to solve much bigger problem. Yeah, that would be more fun.